There's a lot to take in, but it's really, really great if you can get to know these features and this terminology when you're planning your layout. Hi, this is Marlin here at Hearns Hobbies. I just wanted to talk to you guys today about model railway track and just give a basic 101 kind of tutorial on what you need to know regarding model railway track if you're just getting started, or if you are more intermediate or advanced railroader that just needs a little bit of an update on some of the differences and key points about different model railway track. So let's have a look what we've got here with us today. So we're going to focus on primarily the two main scales or gauges, and they would be HO/00, which is this one here. So in Britain, this is represented as 00 scale. In the rest of the world, continental Europe, Australia, the US, this particular track is regarded as HO. So there is a scale difference for the overall appearance of the locomotives and rolling stock and buildings and what have you. For 00, that would be a scale factor of 1:76, and for HO, it's 1:87. So again, a small slight scale difference. But the gauge of the track remains the same regardless of which one of the two you are using. You see here that we have a different variety, a few different varieties actually. This is your traditional wooden sleepers. So these are the sleepers or the ties. Traditionally they were made of wood, soaked in creosote. This is a more unusual one where it's pressed steel panels. Not a particularly common thing, but it is an option for people who do want to model that. Looking at the smaller scales, which we'll get into, you'll also see that there's concrete, which is more representative of what you'd see on a modern railway, and very common here in Australia for the concrete ties. These smaller ones are N gauge or N scale. So the scale factor again is different depending on what part of the world you're in. If you're modeling British, it's scale 1:148. The US and continental Europe, I believe it's 1:160, and Japan's 1:150. So again, small scale differences, but the gauge of the track remains the same. So N stands for 9, as in a 9mm gap between the railheads. So that's where the term for that came from. To the left of that, you'll see that there's another example that also has a 9mm gauge, but this is actually narrow gauge. 009 narrow gauge, as they call it. So again, this is actually representative of 00 scale, so going back to 1:76 scale, but this uses narrow gauge locomotives that run on much narrower track, and because of that, it is the same gauge as N. And as you can see, the sleepers are scaled accordingly. They're much larger than the N gauge ones. In fact, they're more in proportion with what you'd see with the correct scale that they're in, so 1:76. So yeah, that's just a look at the basic gauges and sort of the varieties that you can get with track. Another important factor is the rail code. So the code is basically the height of the rail itself, which is the height of just right here, what they call the rail head. And that is measured in tenths of an inch, basically. So this is what they call code 100 rail, which is probably the most commonly used in HO and 00. What that refers to is that the railhead itself is 1/10 of an inch high. So that's been used for a very long time. It's not actually prototypically accurate as far as scaling goes. So nowadays there are actually a lot of lower profile rails in use. So you might have heard of code 83 or code 80 or code 75. So they're much lower profile, and they're more accurate to scale regarding overall appearance. One of the reasons why code 100 is still very popular is because a lot of accessories like points and crossovers and all other track accessories are still very popular, and the older equipment has quite thick wheel flanges. The wheel flanges are what hold the locomotives and rolling stock onto the track. And as time's gone on and modeling has become more precise and more accurate, Those profiles have actually shrunk quite a bit to be more prototypical. Older equipment will tend to have the larger flanges, and that might cause problems with the lower profile track. What will happen is the flanges will actually contact the sleepers, and it can cause derailments, or at the very least it just won't run very well at all. So that's something to be mindful of when you are running older equipment, if you plan on running older equipment with the newer low profile track. But basically the whole purpose of the lower profile track would just be for a more accurate, more true to scale appearance. Okay, so that's just a look at just a general overview of basic scales, like the most popular scales, and the codes themselves. So we'll talk a little bit about curves. So one very important thing to know about when you're planning a model railway is your curve radius, or radii. There's a lot of different options, and I've just got here on this side. So this is Pico brand N gauge track, and this is what they call a standard curve, and this is in each of the 4 radii or radius numbers that they sell. So this is a radius number 1, a radius number 2, a radius number 3, and a radius number 4. So these are what they call set track pieces. So the curvature is already made. These are just ready to made pieces that will just fit together like this. And the radii is, I mean, again, this is radius 1 and radius 2, but the curvature is created for you. You don't have to do the guesswork with that. Alternatively, you have flex track, which is what these long segments are. These are designed to be flexible so that you can create your own curve radii, which is really great because if you want to have nice gentle transition curves, or if you want to do a larger or a smaller curve radii than what is available as set track, then that's a really, really great option. It can be a bit tricky to work with. There are tools to help put between the rails to get a consistent smooth radius, but generally speaking, more advanced model railway modelers will consider flex track. It's generally a bit more cost effective overall because the lengths are quite long, but it will require that you will need to cut them to the correct width or length that you need. Again, going back to the radius 1, 2, 3, and 4, in OO and HO scale, that is also a system that they use. Again, different manufacturers will offer different curve radii as part of their catalog of available tracks, but that number convention is a very popular way to establish what's being produced and what you might need. So again, the smaller radius and the larger radius, why you might want to go with a larger radius is because certain locomotives and equipment, generally speaking, the longer they are, they might have a difficult time getting around a small radius curve. The disadvantage is you might not have a tremendous amount of space, which would require you to have a smaller curve radius, but as a general rule of thumb, try and have the largest radius that you can get away with. So the largest is best, but obviously there has to be a compromise because not everybody has unlimited space. So be mindful when you are selecting track that the equipment that you have can actually make it around the curve radius that you intend to use, and quite often manufacturers will have a minimum recommended radius for rolling stock and locomotives, which is very, very important to be mindful of. You might find yourself down the road wanting to run longer passenger carriages or big, long, non-articulated steam locomotives, and then you'll find that the track that you've selected might be a bit too small of a radius for those things to navigate. So be very mindful of that when you're planning your layout. And then I'll look at one more option with the track. This is Kato Unitrack. So it's from a Japanese company called Kato. So this is a very, very popular, particularly in N gauge or N scale, type of track with the roadbed attached. So let's have a quick look here. So the roadbed is plastic and the rails are pressed into it. And the way that this differs from these pieces is that you have an additional clip, unijoiner they call it, that holds the track pieces together. And it snaps together really nicely. It's easy to take apart and put back together. These ones use what they just call fish plates or rail joiners. These ones are designed specifically for the N gauge and the 009 narrow gauge track. And they're the ones that are onto the edge of the track here. So there's always one on the opposite end, which allows them to fit together. Normally if you put them on a flat surface and you get them aligned, you'll get a nice join. There we go. And that's just a basic overview of the different model railway tracks that are available, different scales and gauges, and curve radius and rail profiles. So there's a lot to take in, but it's really great if you can get to know these features and this terminology when you're planning your layout to ensure that you have the right track for exactly what you're trying to do. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.